guys, Al2 here, and I'm back with the Traxxas Bigfoot monster truck. Today we're going to talk about the speed modification that I talked about in my unboxing video. I hope you saw the stock running video as well. We had a lot of fun with it in the stock position. It does need a little bit of speed help, so we're going to try to give that to the truck today. If you recall, in the unboxing video I talked about testing that was done by another YouTube person, Driftomaniacs. They tested the speed of the Bigfoot, and then they recommended some possible spur gear and pinion combinations that they tested, and they came up with the best one. So we're going to go ahead and do that today. I'm going to put a link below down in the comments, down in the description section, that is, so you can check his videos out there yourself and see what they did and what their testing methods were. But what we're going to do today is we're going to replace the stock 14 tooth pinion with the Traxxas 2423. This is a 23 tooth pinion. The spur gear we're going to replace with a 76 tooth 4676 from Traxxas. And also, because of the speed increase that we're going to get, this truck doesn't have bearings in the front or the rear. So we're going to replace the stock bushings with the Traxxas 5116 bearing. So you'll need several packs of these to get that done. I believe there's 2 per wheel, so 4 packs will be needed. So that's what we're going to do. Also, what I don't like about this truck is these tires. No foams, like I mentioned before. They don't perform really that well at all, so I might take a look at what I have laying around that might fit this truck for an upgrade as well. So that's it, guys. So let's get started with the modification. Just real quick so you guys can see, these are the parts that I picked up. The spur and the pinion, and the bearings that we're going to use to replace the bushings in the front and the rear of the truck. Alright, time to get started. First thing we're going to do is replace the bushings with the bearings. So let's get the tire off and show you how to do that. Alright, what you want to do is you want to pry off this 12mm hex. Be careful because you got the pin, and mine just dropped out. Luckily stayed on my table. Then you can just push this axle out the back. Push this, oh, there's a shim in the front, so watch, make sure you get your shim off. You push this axle out the back. And there's your axle out. It just has a little cup on the back which holds it against the bushing, so it just slides out. Once that's out, you can see you have a bushing in the front, and then there's one back behind here. So you'll have to try to, I like to get like a threaded bolt. In this case, this is an old axle, a threaded, something with threads that you can push in here and sort of catch the edge and pull it out. And you can sort of work both sides. And there's one of them out. The other one, you can do the same thing, or you can try to push it out. You should be able to push it out, and there's the second one, pushed right out of the back. Now we'll go ahead and put our new bearings in. Just push them in until they're flush. Back one's a little tricky. Push that in until it's flush. And there you go, bushings replaced with bearings. Now we can go ahead and put our axle back in. You can clean it off. Already I could tell you it's much smoother than those bushings. Don't forget to put your shim on. Hub pin. And 12mm hub. You got to push on this pretty good and it'll snap in like that. And there you go. Here's one front side done. We're going to do the other side and then we'll move on to the back. Okay, moving on to the back. Back is a little different than the front. You still have your 12mm hex that we'll have to pop off. But because of the drive axles, we're going to have to remove 2 screws. This screw right here, and there's a second screw here as well. So we're going to go ahead and get those off. Then we'll be able to pop off the hex and we should be able to slide this whole piece right out to get to our bushings. Alright, with that loose, you should be able to pull this straight off. We'll pop this hex off and then we should be able to push this axle out through the carrier. Pin for the hex. There we go. Got a little shim there as well on the back, and you can pull that right off. Bushing number 1. Like I said, the second one, just like the front, you can just push out from the front pretty tight. Number 2. There's our axle carrier. Go ahead and get the new bearings in. Alright, got our carrier here. We're going to go ahead and put the new bearings in. Snap into place, make sure it's flush. Inside one as well. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and put this back together. Clean off the axle here. Slide that back through. Already just much smoother. Put the shim back on. Hex adapter pin. Snap that hex back on. Some of them are really tight, so mine are really tight, so don't be afraid to push on that really hard. Go ahead and get your drive shaft back on. Slide this into place. This actually goes in from the front, not the back. Alright, I'm going to get these two screws tightened, do the other side, and then we'll move on to the transmission where we can replace the spur gear and the pinion. Now on to our transmission where we have the 76 tooth spur we're going to change out to, and the 23 tooth pinion. So let's get camera on here. First thing we're going to need to do is remove these screws right here to get the cover off. And by the way, these screws on this Bigfoot truck are all Phillips head. Alright, we got our cover removed. We got our spur here, slipper clutch spur, and pinion gear right here. Alright, we're going to go ahead and remove this nut holding the slipper together. Now, if you try to do this, it's just going to spin. So, I put the wheels back on and put some force down so they don't spin, so you can spin this nut off. And we got her loose. Nut, spring, and you can slide that gear right off. Going to go ahead and remove these three 2.5 millimeter screws, and that will remove this slipper assembly on the back of the gear. This plate can be a little tight, so go ahead and take something and punch it out. And there's our slipper assembly off. The bearing you can just push out of there. And that's it. Alright, we got our new gear. I'm going to go ahead and line up the three holes on the slipper. Push that in. When you put the screws in, it will seat against the back of the gear. So we're going to go ahead and put our three screws back in. I would go ahead and snug these slowly so it pulls in nice and flush, so you're not pulling one side in before the other too. So just kind of work your way back and forth till they're snug. Alright, here's the slipper. I'm going to go ahead and put our bearing back in. Alright, let's go ahead and put our spur gear back on. Be careful this plate. Slide that back on. Take your spring and your nut. Alright, go ahead and tighten your slipper back up. You'll have to either get it back where it was originally, or make sure you tighten it enough to get the amount of slippage that you want. If it's too loose and you put pressure down and you turn this, it'll just spin freely with the axles not spinning. So I like to set it so that with a generous amount of pressure the front end sort of pops up. So I'm going to go ahead and push, and you can see there it slipped. So it's still too loose. Go ahead and spin. That's pretty close to where it was. You can sort of look at the threads on the end of this when you take yours apart and just try to put it back to the same spot. You can go in here and adjust this if you need to. Just make sure you don't have it too loose that slips too much. All right, let's go ahead and get the pinion replaced. All right, looks like our pinion is held on by, appears to be a 1.5 millimeter grub screw, so we're going to go ahead and remove that. Be careful not to lose that. All right, this pinion may be a little tight, so just go ahead. I like to take a little screwdriver and just pry on it just a little bit to loosen it up. This one's very tight. Whoop. And off it comes. And there's our old pinion. Here's our new pinion, which is much larger. But let's go ahead and test fit this up and see what it looks like. Yeah, so it doesn't even come in contact with the spur gear, so once I get this tight on the shaft, we'll go ahead and loosen. There's two screws, one here and a second one up here on the top. We'll go ahead and that'll allow us to move the motor and get the proper mesh. So let's get the gear on first and then we'll go ahead and do that. Now make sure you put a little bit of blue Loctite to hold that gear on nice and tight. The shaft does have a flattened spot on it, so you want to make sure you line up your grub screw so that it contacts that flat spot of the shaft. It's going to take a little bit of thread gel and put on the end of this grub screw. Okay, got my gear lined up and I'm on the flat part of the shaft, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down. Just have to make it snug. Your gel is going to hold it there. Alright, so there's our gear back on, so now we're going to go ahead and set the mesh. Alright, first thing we're going to do is loosen these two Phillips head screws that hold the motor. Now we can slide our pinion as such, back and forth. Take a piece of paper, put it in between the gears, and use that as the gauge for the mesh. So just push that tightly. Go ahead and tighten up your two motor screws. Make sure they're nice and tight. You should be good. That should have your mesh set properly then. Alright, go ahead and take your finger and spin your spur gear. Just make sure everything is smooth and everything lined up nice and straight, and it is. So I'm going to go ahead and put the wheel back on, and we're going to go ahead and set this slipper. We just roughly set it. Alright, got the tires back on. Going to go ahead and adjust this slipper. I like to put the controller on one tire and my hand on the other and just give it some throttle. When you can hear it just slipping like crazy. So that's a little too loose. We're just going to tighten it up just a little bit. Now it's slipping just a little bit, so that's probably pretty good right there. So I'm just going to leave it right there. Now that's with a generous amount of pressure, so it just wants to go. So that's good. So that's it, guys. Going to put the cover back on, and we're going to go ahead and do a speed run and see what kind of improvement we got. I didn't use any GPS to measure actual speed of the Traxxas Bigfoot, but I can definitely tell you that the truck is definitely faster than stock, somewhere probably between 5 and 10 miles an hour. So what we did is use my 1/16 E Revo, which has an upgraded pinion in it, which goes pretty darn fast, in excess of 40 miles an hour. And even though that truck was faster, it was only barely faster. So I would put this truck somewhere 35 mile an hour top speed. And just a guess, definitely faster though. But what we gained in speed, we lost low end torque. It was really hard to pop wheelies, so really couldn't pop any wheelies, and maybe my slipper is a little loose, I'm not sure, so I'm going to have to check that. But that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're planning on upgrading your truck with the speed modification that I showed here, I hope this helped you out a lot. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.